When Zali Steggall was able to beat Tony Abbott, there was a great belief inside a certain part of Australia that this could be, well, cut and paste and copied in lots of other Liberal electorates all over the country. That somehow Zali Steggall could pass herself off as a former disaffected Liberal, despite the fact that, by her own admission, for the entirety of the time she's been an adult, she never voted Liberal in a federal election. But that you could somehow peel off some Liberal Party seats. You could return them to a more modern Liberal version rather than the evil Conservative version that people like Tony Abbott represented. Well, let me introduce you to a group that we have talked about before, but they're back in the news, the Voices For group. And this is apparently, allegedly, a giant group of people around the country who are disaffected Liberals, apparently. You know, we've voted Liberal all our lives except, for the last 30 years. And they're all going to get together and they think they can do their own Zali everywhere. Now, their money comes from lots of different places, but principally somebody who is willing to say that he is tipping a fair amount of money into the effort of trying to find the disaffected Liberals to pull a Zali in multiple places all over the country is Simon Holmes à Court. Simon Holmes à Court has given multiple interviews about how his plan works, which is to run these disaffected Liberals on a platform of climate change and things like a anti-corruption commission. Yet they're not running in any Labor seats anywhere because the truth is they just want to deny the Liberal Party any chance of being able to form government. And if they do, it has to be a minority, and it's a minority, which of course means they go shopping to the disaffected Liberals who haven't voted Liberal for the past 20 or maybe 30 years, or ever at the federal level when it comes to Zali Steggall. In one of the many appearances that Simon Holmes à Court has made, he has said that if we can just win one or two seats, it's highly likely that there will be a minority government. So again, what the whole plan is, pick off a few Liberals here and there, and then essentially you are able to change the system from the crossbench. Remember, when Clive Palmer talks about this, it's buying an election or perverting democracy. When, of course, it's a person with a teardrop on their Twitter feed, it's, restoring democracy. Now, this group can exist and people can have their opinion. No one can pretend otherwise. But you see, these people are very well connected because they have lots of mates inside the media who pretend that every little movement that this mob put together is somehow a grassroots action plan, despite the fact that the grassroots come from, well, a pretty big house and not a lot of money coming from normal people. Here in part are some of the stories. Now, you've got The Guardian constantly talking about the movement, but then every time these people pick a candidate, and by the way, people don't put their hands up, they have to go finding candidates to represent these grassroots groups, they get reported on, like in the ABC or like in the SMH, and they get reported on in The Guardian, and it circles around over and over and over again. Now, interestingly, no such coverage is offered to the Palmer United Party that plans to run a candidate in every single seat in the country. You don't see stories every couple of days about who Pauline Hanson might be running in your local area because, of course, none of that matters. You see, they want to pretend that there's a Zali around every corner, that there's a huge collection of disaffected Liberals who just want them to be a bit more like the Greens. Now, despite the fact that there is a lot of money behind this and people like Simon Holmes à Court who has every right to do this, the reality is that it's a little hard to find the support. Now, there are a few thousand people on Twitter, like we showed you before, who are willing to say they're kind of part of all of this. But as James Morrow showed last week, many of the people there, well, they also, support things like Extinction Rebellion, hardly long-term former Liberal Party ideas. And when you actually have a look at the Facebook accounts of some of these groups, they're not exactly thousands of people in any one area. These supposed grassroots groups that are so important that they get reported on in the Channel 9 newspapers, on the ABC and in The Guardian all day, every day. In fact, the Voices of Hume group has 530 likes, which is more than the Voices for Wentworth and Bradfield and Boothby and Kooyong. Yet all of these places will apparently have a grassroots network of people desperate to change the Liberal Party and, by extension, the country. I repeat, when Clive Palmer tries to do this, it's buying an election. when people who are doing it for the right reasons, they're given mainstream coverage. Now, I'm somebody who has always supported minor party voting. I've always supported minor party voices in the Senate. But make no mistake, this is not about former Liberals. This is about trying to pretend that there are former Liberals, to try to find a kind of liberal-ish face for people to vote for, while the fact is that they're actually going to end up voting more with the Labor Party and the Greens. How do we know that? Because that's exactly what Zali Steggall has done since she became a Member of Parliament. Now, amazingly, these people who apparently care about the climate are not running in any of the Labor Party seats, where, remember, the Labor Party has no target for 2030. These people who apparently want to change the system by introducing an anti-corruption commission are running only in Liberal seats, because apparently nothing's ever happened in a Labor seat. This is a fraud. Now, it's a very successful fraud because they've got money and they've got influence. They've got connections to the media, but they've got bullshit support in the community. Instead, this is called astroturfing. This is when you pretend that there is a grassroots group, but it is, just like AstroTurf, fake grass.